Good evening, folks. Welcome to another session from the Wise Asylum. So these are some interesting things. So obviously I'll put the link up after, so you don't have to copy it on here. You can just copy it straight off the page. Legal definitions of interest. I dip into some legal word definitions to better help you understand the literature that comes through your door. And I haven't put a full stop. Your Christian name. It says the baptismal name as distinct from the surname. So distinct from the surname. Stratton v. Foster, 11th ME 467. The name which is given one after his birth or at baptism. So they're still using the term birth because this is a legal dictionary. Yeah? And birth is when they create. So I'm supposed to look at the Frankenstein now as the first form, the secondary form being the registration of the birth, creating the trust, the SQV. So I think I don't think they're necessarily separate titles, I'm thinking. I don't mean that's a fact. So I think the first part is the business that goes on in the hospital, and the second part is the registration, creating the trust, the birth of the trust. So they're still using the birth, but when you understand the wizardry, of course, you can see through it and still grasp the context of what it's saying. Or is afterward assumed by him in addition to his family name. So it is in addition to your family name. Now the use of the term family name is important as well, because that again is common custom, and it's a patronymic because it's a gift. And statutes don't have any power over gift. Which is why my mate that they murdered last year, Danny Patronymic, used the term patronymic as his pseudonym. A Christian name may consist of a single letter. There is no presumption that letters are not themselves Christian names. And where a letter or letters appear before a surname, they are treated, in the absence of any showing to the contrary, as the Christian name. Born. 1080. Descent, birth. To beget, to bring forth. See, look. Descent. Birth. Descent, birth, because it's born. So you see, even to lawyers, can you see how everybody's so compartmentalised in everything that goes on? A lawyer, typical thicko, just qualified to tell lies and hide things, being all round deceiver, wouldn't even know that it wouldn't treat to him that born and birth is separate. But yet, when you know, they tell you, descent, birth. You get in it. It's a descent. You're going down the fucking slippery snake. You're not climbing the ladder. To beget, to bring forth, bearing children. Children. Words of the state. Became the father of. Became father, begotten, born, child again. So they flip. But this is a legal dictionary, means blacks forth. Then they have to wake up. The lawyers, have they? They have to keep them under the spell too. Conceived, father, gives birth. So you can see born, father, connected, produce, and then you got gives birth. No, again, blah, 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 blah. Some foreign stuff. The above by anal. What? From above by anal. What? From the first by, well, this is blacks, so. From above again. See, they even get it in blacks. Oh, gracious. Anyway. Distinct. Clear to the senses or mind. Easily perceived or understood. Plain, unmistakable. You see, when you're putting your paperwork together, you start deck, stuff like this. Understanding these words. And then you can add it to your definitions on your page at the bottom. Which part of that you want to mean. So you don't have to use it all then. There's no room for a judgment. If you are using a term and you only want one part of it, then you'll put that in your interpretations on your page. Because you're telling them what it means. They can't then start fanning around and playing in this sophist game. Oh, it might mean this. Well, we thought it meant that. No, pal. Because I'm showing you what it means. Yeah? So this is why these kind of definitions are important. Distinguished by nature or station, evidently not identical observably or decidedly different. not the same, different in the place or like, separate, individual, that which is capable of being distinguished, actually divide or apart from things, or from other things. Ignorantia facie excusat. Ignorance of fact excuses or is a ground of relief. Acts done and contracts made under mistake or ignorance of a material fact are avoidable and relievable in law and equity. Black's fourth. Alright? Like I said, back to your motor. The fraud is the first fraud is carried out by the seller when it's a brand new car, because they don't tell you that they're going to hand over the manufacturer's title to the DVLA. Yeah? So that's important, that one. Law of trademarks. A title may become a subject of property as one who has adopted a particular title for a newspaper or other business enterprise may, by long and prior user or by compliance with statutory provisions as to registration and notice, acquire a right to be protected in the exclusive use of it. Because a lot of people have been told to turn their name into a trademark. Black's fourth. Public seal. A seal belonging to and used by one of the bureaus or departments of government for authenticating or attesting documents, process or records. An impression made of some device by means of a piece of metal or other hard substance kept and used by a public authority. Information. An accusation exhibited against a person, see, use the word person, for some criminal offence without an indictment. An accusation in the nature of an indictment from which it differs only in being presented by a competent public officer on his oath of office, instead of a grand jury on their oath. That's interesting. A written accusation sworn to before a magistrate, upon which an indictment is afterwards founded. Yeah? So an oath gives you an indictment. So we don't like to do oaths because the Bible says you haven't to, so you do a statutory declaration. You see? Again, can you see how these things are different? The word is also frequently used in the law in its sense of communicated knowledge. And affidavits are frequently made, but they're oaths. And pleadings and other documents verified on information and belief. Black's fourth. Peculiar, adjective, particular or special. Now, I use special because you're determining the jurisdiction, not because it's not applicable to any existing jurisdiction. That's why you've got special constable, special this, special that. They're a jurisdiction unto their own determination. So you'd have to determine if you're making special appearance, you'd have to express what that special appearance, what the jurisdiction in relation to what special means, in your case, means. Can you see how when you're communicating in this way, you're your own judge, you're using words and you're defining them. You're giving the interpretation, so there's no room for anybody else to come in and go, well, hang on a minute, you've told them. Delivery. An act by which the res or substance thereof is placed within the actual or constructive possession or control of another. So when you put something in a trust, it's the res. That's what's in it. It's the substance of it. In medical jurisprudence, the act of a woman giving birth to her offspring. Birth. You see that? See how they mix up birth and offspring? See, offspring is the correct term. You can use progeny, but I haven't actually looked at that as to what it actually means in terms as is it legal or is it law or common custom. So they make, to keep the barristers in the spell, the actual woman giving birth to her offspring. So they tie an offspring to birth. So the lawyer would then see, when we know that that's not the case. Pacifist, one who seeks to maintain peace and to abolish war. One who refuses or is unwilling for any purpose to bear arms because of conscientious considerations, and who is disposed to encourage others in such refusal. Infidel, one who does not believe in the existence of a God. See how they put a God? Because this is the legal wizardry. When really it's existence of God, not a God, who will reward or punish in this world or that which is to come. One who professes no religion that can bind his or her conscience. You see, infidel isn't so much religion, it's just about they don't accept the existence of an higher power in its true form. One who professes no religion, see, that's rubbish, that can bind his conscience to speak the truth. No, that actually makes sense, my apologies. Okay. Well, sure. One who does not recognise the inspiration or obligation of the Holy Scriptures or generally recognised features of the Christian religion. See, that's nonsense, because one man's holy is another man's evil. One man's evil is another man's holy. Which is why it's important that you understand what kind of characters you're going to have at the top of this Noahide. They're calling it holy, and the scriptures they're going to enforce, they're calling them they're holy. But to us, we know them as not holy. We're told that the laws of man, and they're of the synagogue of Satan, or the Babylonian Talmud. And again, that's Black's Fourth. Pharmakia, 5331. Pharmakia, and to administer drugs. And of course, a drug is a synthetic concoction, not weed. You know, it's a plant. The use of medicine, drugs, or spells, even. So, yeah. Ooh, and they've just used one of them on you in the last 3 years. Sorcery. There it is. Q prior est tempor potier est Dieu. See how posh I'm there. He who is before in time is the better in right. Oh, it's a different one. See, I've mixed that up. See, I did put it together this afternoon, so it's a separate one. But they're both blacks. He who is before in time is better in right. He who is before in time is better in right. So that's where if you get your case in first, you're better in right, according to the judiciary. Priority in time gives preference in law. So it's always first to get in first, yeah? A maxim of very extensive application, both at law and in equity. Black's Fourth. Feigned diseases. Oh, there's... How many people do I know that feign that? Because they're drug addicts. Simulated maladies. Diseases are generally feigned from one of the three causes. Fear, shame, or the hope of gain. Well, look at that. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. Because that is exactly what every single one here that's danced, every single one that's danced, has done so as a feigned disease due to shit in the cell, knowing that they're complete fruit bats, and they thought they might get some cash and time off. Hey, there you go. There you go, see. And all you businesses that stayed open and didn't get any hassle, two in Accrington I can mention, you thought you were getting that, didn't you? Oh, we're on the council's ass even more now, look how clever we are, we do what they say, we love the council and we're going to grass and spine everybody. Which is what they do. Escape. The departure or deliverance out of custody of a person who was lawfully imprisoned before he is entitled to his liberty by the process of law. The voluntary or negligently allowing any person lawfully in confinement to leave the place. Okay? Because escape is what we're all trying to do, is it not? So that's why we're learning what we're learning. Cannot denotes that one is not able to do some act. But the term is often equivalent to shall not. Exactly. When somebody says to me, I can't do that, I say, you mean you will not do it? Yeah, different. To escape, again. Oh, I didn't know we got it twice. Expert French, to obtain exemption from, to obtain security from, to fly, to avoid. That's Webster's, 1828. Exempt, to release, discharge, waive, relieve from liability, to relieve, excuse, exempt. One who is free from liability to military service, as distinguished from a detail who is one belonging to the army, but detached or set apart from the time to some particular service, duty or service, and liable at any time to be recalled in his place in the ranks. See exempts, blacks forth. Well, if you took your oath to QE2 as a military boy, or indeed as any civil servant, you know that oath is fulfilled. You no longer are under any of the obligations that you were while you were in service. Yeah, how many of you recognise that? None of you are under oath. I mean, and I took the oath to that title when I joined. So, and I only thought about it, so the weekend I just thought to myself, well, do you know, I'm actually free of it now. And that is true. So, hip hip hooray! Because I certainly wouldn't be doing any oaths to big ears. I can tell you that. Well, I won't take any else anyway, to anybody anymore. Mandatory contracts. One who undertakes to perform a mandate. Bouvier's 1856. Conscience. The moral sense, the faculty of judging the moral qualities of actions or of discriminating between right and wrong, particularly applied to one's perception and judgment of the moral qualities of his own conduct, but in a wider sense, denoting a similar application of the standards of morality to the acts of others. The sense of right and wrong inherent in every person. Person? See? By virtue of his existence as a social entity. You see, of course, a person, his morals are given to him. He has to copy them. Yeah? By virtue of his existence as a social entity, good conscience being a synonym of equity. In law, especially, the moral rule which requires probity, justice, and honest dealing between man and man. Because you're going to get honest dealing between a man and a man. No persons are honest because they can't be. Yeah? So at least they give it in there. So you can see that even the lawyers are kept under the spell. It's loaded. Until you start to break through the tricks and the traps and the wizardry, you just bag along. So you know most lawyers are not even going to see this kind of stuff. So there you go. And an honest dealing between man and man. And man alone. Because to be a man, there's no bullshit when you're dealing with your peers. As when they say that a bargain is against conscience or unconscionable, or that the price paid for property at a forced sale was so inadequate as to shock the conscience. This is also the meaning of the term as applied to the jurisdiction and principles of decisions of courts of chancery, as in saying that such a court is a court of conscience. Now that's interesting. So the chancery, so if you're putting stuff together for the chancery, you will need to understand conscience and how it's applied in the law, which is interesting. Look at that. Natural. The juristic meaning of this term does not differ from the vernacular, except in the cases where it is used in opposition to the term legal. See that? It differs, does natural, from the term legal. Yeah? And then it means proceedings from or determined by physical causes or conditions, as distinguished from positive enactments of law, or attributable to the nature of man rather than to the commands of law, or based upon moral rather than legal considerations or sanctions. Yeah? So natural has got nothing to do with legal. Nothing to do even with commands of law. Yeah? It's morality. Unalienable. Inalienable. Incapable of being aliened. That is sold and transferred. So that's what you're all looking for. So if you're building a stat deck together, you need to incorporate this. Because you're presenting yourself as unalienable, amongst other things. Fraud. An international perversion of truth for the purpose of inducing another in reliance upon it to part with some valuable thing belonging to him or surrender a legal right. So if somebody's fucking you because they think they've got you under their control, they're committing fraud. A false representation of a matter of fact, whether by words or by conduct. Well, that's the priesthood all over. That's every politician, it's every councillor, every civil servant. They're fraud because they're deceiving you. False representation of a matter of fact. So all these baby boomers that thought they were all fantastic and amazing and Christians, don't talk out your ass, guys. If you were in this, you were lying, you're a fraud. You're not going to sit next to Jesus. Right? You're not playing out with it. Or by concealment of that which should have been disclosed. Yeah? Car sellers. By concealment of that which should have been disclosed. It's fraud. Did they tell you they were handing over manufacturer's thing to the DVLA? No, they didn't. Which deceives and is intended to deceive another so that he shall act upon it to his legal injury. The minute you've bought that car and you weren't told that that title's going off to DVLA, everything you do from that point on is creating a legal injury. Everything. You have to do this, you have to do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. Can you dig it? Any kind of artifice employed by one person to deceive another. How many people do you know? Everybody's at it. Everybody's at it. A generic term embracing all multifarious means which human ingenuity can devise, and which are restored to one by one individual to get advantage over another by false suggestions or by suppression of the truth, and includes all surprise, trick, cunning, disassembling, and any unfair way by which another is cheated. Bad faith and fraud are synonymous, and also synonymous of dishonesty, infidelity, faithlessness, perfidy, unfairness, and that's what? Fourth. And I can see that in everybody I know, and I just never let them know I know it. But I see it. I see it. It's worth going through that. Just getting that inside yourself, that, because then you'll start to see all the bullshit of everybody you know. If the defendant, I don't know why, so this doesn't seem to have a title, but I'll read it here because I can't remember what it says. If the defendant admits to plead a misnomer, he may be taken in execution by the wrong name. If there be a corporation aggregate as a mayor and commonalty, dean and chapter, the mayor or dean need not be named by his Christian name, because that such a corporation standeth in lieu both of the Christian name and the surname. A grant to one who is an esquire by the name of such and one knight is void, because knight is part of the name of a man as much as his Christian name. Oh, okay, that's interesting. A bastard, after he hath gained a name by reputation, may purchase by his reputed name. A woman was indicted by the name of Elizabeth Newman, alias Judith Hancock, and it was quashed for that reason, because a person cannot have two Christian names. Well, that's weird, because up there it says that a letter can be a Christian name. So it's a bit of controversy going on in Black's Fourth there. So I suppose if you were a lawyer and you were looking to win, and you had choice of this one and the other one, you go with this one because you can win. You won't go with the other one, you go with this one. So, skullduggery in Black's Fourth, surprise, surprise, not. Potentate, a person who possesses great power or sway, a prince, sovereign, or monarch. By the naturalisation law of the United States, an alien is required to renounce all allegiances to any foreign prince, potentate, or sovereign whatever. Not under wonky Biden. A person note. Impossibilum nulla obligatio est. There is no obligation to do impossible things. It's impossible that a trust can operate a car, as an example. Yeah, get that in your head. Possession is 9/10 of the law. This adage is not to be taken as true to the full extent, so as to mean that the person in possession can only be ousted by one whose title is 9 times better than his. But it places in a strong light the legal truth that every claimant must succeed by the strength of his own title, and not by the weakness of his antagonists. That's interesting. You understand why they give everybody title. So if you're going up against a Sir, you can have all the Sir Lancelots trying to get up your ass. Yeah? Error of fact. That is called error of fact, which proceeds either from ignorance of that which really exists, or from a mistaken belief in the existence of that which has none. Finding of fact contrary to the weight of the evidence is an error of fact. Error in fact, supra blacks forth. Facsimile, an exact copy, preserving all the marks of the original. Gestor, in the civil law, one who acts for another or transacts another's business. That's a bit like a trustee, isn't it? Subject to, liable, subordinate, subservient, inferior, obedient to, governed or affected by, provided, answerable for. Above, higher, superior, as, court above, plaintiff or defendant above. Above all encumbrances means in excess thereof. Principal, as distinguished from what is auxiliary or instrumental. Bail to action or special bail is otherwise termed bail above. Jurisdiction, above the jurisdiction of justice of the peace. Synonymous with without. Remedy, the means by which a right is enforced or the violation of a right is prevented, redressed or compensated. Yeah? Remedies are of 4 kinds. By act of party injured, the principal, which are defence, recaption, distress, entry, abatement and seizure. 2. By operation of law, as in the case of retainer or remitter. 3. By argument between the parties, e.g. by accord and satisfaction and arbitration. And 4. By judicial remedy, e.g. action or suit. So there's lots of different ways of approaching a problem than going to the courts. Legal remedy, a remedy available under the particular circumstances of the case in a court of law, as distinguished from a remedy available only in equity. Interesting. So a legal remedy is nothing to do with equity. Keep that in mind. Which, Chancery King's Bench is equity. So it's not legal. But you'd have to bring law in it. Otherwise, we've seen it flips like Supreme Court does and just stays commercial because nobody brings any other jurisdiction in. Relief. The assistance or support, pecuniary or otherwise, granted to indigent persons by the proper administrators of the poor laws. Also wages paid in cash or in kind for public work because of the need. Deliverance from oppression, wrong or injustice. In this sense, it is used as a general designation of the assistance, redress or benefit which a complainant seeks at the hands of a court, particularly in equity. So relief again is what you'd use in equity. You want relief, but you can use remedy also. It may be thus used of such remedies as specific performance or the reformation or rescission of a contract, but it does not seem appropriate to the awarding of money damages. Pilgrims. From 3844 and the base of 1927, an alien alongside, i.e. a resident foreigner. Pilgrim, stranger. New American Standard, Hebrew Aramaic Dictionary. So a pilgrim is a foreigner. So we're being invaded by pilgrims. I told you Oliver Cromwell were shit. In charge of means in the care or custody of or entrusted to the management or direction of, and that's Black's Forth. Human, notice there's a little, between the hue and the man. And this is Webster's 1828. Adjective, Latin, humanus, heb, form, species. Form, Now that works in sync with the garden, because the Lord God formed the man that he liked and formed everything else in the garden. So it's not a man, it's not Genesis 1, it's a species, a shade of. 1. Belonging to man and mankind, pertaining or relating to the race of man. Bullshit! It's telling lies. As a human voice, human shape, human nature, human knowledge, human life. Having the qualities of a man. So why then have they do... See, and this is Webster's, 1828. That's a little bit bloody naughty, but you've got to keep the lawyers under the spell as well. Having the qualities of a man. Profane, not sacred or divine. As a human author, not in use today, but it used to be in 1828. Human was of the profane, so not sacred or divine. That's why the Masons use that. Everybody's profane except them. Because they know more bullshit than you. So in their use of it, you're in a better frame because you're not full of shit. Artificial person. In a figurative sense, a body of men or a company are sometimes called an artificial person, because the law associates them as one and gives them various powers possessed by natural persons. Flaming hell's a natural person. Corporations are such artificial persons. Now, remember this, your entry, your Christian name, is the trust, the credit side. Because it doesn't become a corporation until it has a surname attached to it. Then your given name has been incorporated with a surname. So now you're even an artificial person. So you're a person on your entry, but an artificial person on the birth certificate. Which is why I've had success when I've actually used that entry. Private person. An individual is not the incumbent of an office. So if you ever go around and say, no, I'm a private person, it doesn't mean you're in the private. You're just not in any incumbent office. Yeah, you're not a public servant and such. Registrant, one who registers, particularly one who registers anything, e.g. a trademark, for the purpose of securing a right or a privilege granted by law on condition of such registration. Register, to record formally and exactly, to enrol, to enter precisely in a list or the like, to make correspond exactly one with another, to fit correctly in a relative position, to be in correct alignment with one another. So when you register your flea bag today, what they'd call to make it fit correctly is they have to add a surname. Yeah, so they've shifted it off its original. But then this is Black's, which is a legal dictionary, remember. Register. An officer authorised by law to keep a record called a register or a registry, as a register for the probate of wills. A book containing a record of facts as they occur, kept by a public authority. A register of births, marriages and burials. Or deaths, as we use. Insinuation. In the civil law, the transcription of an act in the public register is like our recording of deeds. It was not necessarily in any other alienation, but that appropriation to the purpose of donation. Right, so that's a donation. That's interesting. Because then you really are into all the Vatican method of getting money. So it's in the civil law. Now, civil law requires a contract. Criminal law requires a victim. So insinuation straight away in civil law tells you it's a contract. The transcription of an act on the public register is like our recording of deeds. And this is a donation. Interesting. I like that. I might have to have a look at that, because that's put on a couple of little lines there. Births. A stamp duty is imposed upon the registering of every birth or christening. A stamp duty. The same shall extend to all Protestant dissenters. Oh dear. Yeah, they give you all surnames. It's a dead trust. That was clever, that, isn't it? Yeah? Jeez, man. Honestly, it's just so ridiculous. Burn 1792, that. And I've put a link under there because that expands it somewhat. Birth. The act of being wholly brought into the world. The world, see, not earth. The conditions of live birth are not satisfied when a part only of the body is born. The whole body must be brought into the world and detached from that of the mother, and after this event the child must be alive. We've explored how they've tweaked this in the Frankenstein video I did on the placenta. The circulating system must also be... What? So a child must have a circulation. We've covered that again. So yeah, they mimic everything and turn it into a pantomime. And we've gone through that with the Frankenstein vid. But it is not necessary that there should have been a separation of the umbilical cord. That may still connect the child with the mother, and yet the killing of it will constitute murder. This is where your abortionists get, because it specifies once it's come out to the mother to be murder. So that's word wizardry, innit, of the Talmud. Oh, how fools have we been? How foolish. Name, see misnomer. Right? Misnomer. The use of of one name for another. Misnomer, where there is an original issued against a man, or there is a bill of indictment exhibited against him by a wrong Christian name. If proceedings were so misnomer. So if you're answering stuff for your surname, it's a misnomer. Oh, well, hang on. If he was arrested upon process of such writ or indictment, he may have an action of trespass or false imprisonment against the officer. Nay, if he made opposition. Oh, so they're talking about if they use it. That's interesting. That is interesting, actually. It's not what I thought it were, but it does work. They're interesting. Notwithstanding what. So they could find it effective. If he was arrested upon process of such writ or indictment, so this is the wrong name. He may have an action of trespass or false imprisonment against the officer. Nay, if he made opposition and killed him, it would be manslaughter. So if a copper comes up to you to arrest you and you make it clear that he's arrested the wrong person, you could actually kill him and it wouldn't be murder, it'd be manslaughter. So if you had to defend yourself enough to keep these Johnny-come-latelys from arresting you when you've told them, it wouldn't be murder. I mean, I'm not saying go out and murder them, but you could... That shows you that if you're being wrongly arrested, you've got the lawful capacity to kick the shit out of them and arrest them. But notwithstanding all this, to prevent any possible danger to this man's liberty or property, though he could not effectually be hurt by it, the law allows him to come in and plead that misnomer to the writ or bill, and it shall abate for that reason, and the defendant not be put to answer though he is in court. Now that's interesting. And that says name, see misnomer, blacks. And the name under that, it says name under common law consists of one Christian name and one surname. So when coppers are asking you for a name, even under the common law, it's specified in blacks that it consists of one Christian name and one surname. So if you've got your entry and they ask for your name, you say, yes, sure, do your surname. No. Show them your entry. There you go, son. You see the difference and why it's important that that's the beginning on this journey of understanding the difference in those two titles. Surname, the family name, the name over and above the Christian name, over and above, look. The part of the name which is not given in baptism. The name of a person which is derived from the common name of his parents. The last name, the name common to all members of the family, a patronymic, which is a gift. So it's not given in baptism. So when people say Christianity is the cause of all this system, it ain't. It's telling you there. So the enemy, which we know does include the surname, isn't Christian. It isn't Catholic. It's Talmud. Legal title. One cognizable and enforceable in a court of law, or one which is complete and perfect so far as regards the apparent right of ownership and possession, but which carries no beneficial interest in the property, another person being equitably entitled thereto. So a trustee has legal title if you've got a trustee for your trust. In either case, the antithesis of equitable title. So legal title isn't equitable title. So settler beneficiaries own equitable title. The trustee is holding legal title, but it's not his. He just has the possession of it, yeah? Legal right. Natural rights. Rights existing as a result of contract. And rights created or reorganised by law. Recognised by law, my apologies. Signature. The act of putting down a man's name at the end of an instrument to attest its validity. The name thus written, a signature, may be written by hand-printed, stamped, typewritten, engraved, photographed, or cut from one instrument and attached to another. And the signature lithographed on an instrument by a party is sufficient for the purpose of signing it. It being immaterial with that kind of instrument, a signature is made. And that's found in Black's Fourth. Weird. Anyway. Civil death. A state of a person who, through possessing natural life, has lost all his civil rights, and as to them is considered dead. At common law, the extinction of civil rights and relations, so that the property of a person declared civilly dead passes to his heirs. Freemen might want to have a look at that. As if deed in fact. So it's passed to his heirs as if deed in fact. Sign. To affix one's name to a writing or instrument for the purpose of authenticating it, or to give in effect as one's act. Textile industrial age is particularly used in law for special times, which enables persons of both sexes to do certain acts which before, through want of years and judgment, they are prohibited to do. As for example, a man at 12 years of age ought to take the oath of allegiance to the king. At 14, which is the age of discretion, he may consent to marriage and choose his guardian, and at 21 he may alienate his lands. A woman at 9 years of age is dowable. At 12 she may consent to marriage. At 14 she is of the years of discretion, and may choose a guardian, and at 21 she may alienate her lands. The age of 21 is the full age of man or woman. Well, with mixed man when it should be person, because there's... Yeah. Which enables them to... is a human or woman. Which enables them to control and manage for themselves in respect of their estates, until which time they cannot act with security to those that deal with them. For their acts are in most cases either void or voidable. So that's another one you want to have a good look at and get that in your mind, the context of it. Secular. Secularis, Latin secular, French. Not spiritual. Relating to affairs of the present world, not wholly worldly. Johnson's 1755. Sanctuary. In Old English law, a consecrated place which had certain privileges annexed to it, and to which offenders are accustomed to resort for refuge, because they could not be arrested there, nor the laws be executed. Post natus. Born afterwards, a term applied to old writers for a second or younger son. It is used in private international law to designate a person who was born after some historic event, such as the American Revolution or the Act of Union between England and Scotland, and whose rights or status will be governed or affected by the question of his birth, before or after such event, before or after. Now that's another very interesting one, because we're all under the Act of Union, aren't we? So we're all under bankrupt doctrine, so you can't get out of it, because we were born after. Corporate surety, or at least not, you have to rebut it, is what I'm saying. Corporate suretyship. Accounting and statistics, vital statistics, it's in the spreadsheet. Preparations of label. When the newborn bond has thus been christened with a number, its birth certificate is prepared. Its genealogical record entered and the child adequately described for the archives of the company. And I think that is Black's Fourth. Although I've missed it off there, but it is Black's fourth, that. And a newborn bond has thus been christened with a number. How disgusting. That's disgusting. So a newborn, that's you as a Christian name. The bond is when they attach a surname. Nominal party. Those who are joined as parties defendants merely because the technical rules of pleading require their presence in the record. Those having no interest in immediate controversy but having interest in subject matter, which may be conveniently settled in suit. Novation. Substitution of new contract between same or different parties. The substitution of a new debt or obligation for an existing one. The substitution by mutual agreement of one debtor for another, or of one creditor for another, whereby the old debt is extinguished. Novation, folks, that's what these bums are playing about with when they're selling debts on. So you get some Johnny come lately at your door, a bailiff, trying to pick up a debt that they've bought. Tender, an offer of money, an act by which one produces and offers to a person holding a claim or demand against him the amount of money which he considers and admits to be due, in satisfaction of such claim or demand, without any stipulation or condition. Idiot, a person who has been without understanding from his nativity, and whom the law therefore presumes never likely to attain any. Without understanding. So, and that I'm saying these classes, they think they understand because they know this garbage, and you don't, so you're an idiot. It says, see insanity. Idiota in the civil law. An unlearned, illiterate, or simple person. Calvin. A private man, not one in office. So it can also be a private man. Not a private person, remember. So I can't claim, I'm an idiot. Yeah. Black's fourth again. Election. The act of choosing and selecting one or more from greater number of persons, things, courses or rights. The choice of an alternative. The internal free and spontaneous separation of one thing from another without compulsion, consisting in intention and will. The selection of one person from a specified class to discharge certain duties in a state, corporation and society. That's fourth. So, yeah, you're all in the society, blah, 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 and you vote in the elections. You give them your will. Election again, noun, Latin, electio. The act of choosing, choice, the act of selecting one or more from others, hence appropriately. And that's Webster's, 1828. Slave, a noun, a person who is wholly subject to the will of another. One who has no will of his own, because that means he can't contract. But whose person and service are wholly under the control of another. In the early state of the world, and to this day among some barbarous nations, prisoners of war are considered and treated as slaves. The slaves of modern times are more generally purchased, like horses and oxen. Webster's 1828. You'll have nothing and be happy. He's telling you they're going to turn you into slaves. Okay? Are you happy? Spartacus, where are you? Divorce, verb transitive. To dissolve the marriage contract and thus separate husband and wife. To separate as married woman from the bed and board of her husband. To separate or disunite things closely connected. To force asunder. To take away, to put away. Webster's 1828. Above, higher, superior, as we've done above. Private. Affecting or belonging to private individuals as distinct from the public generally. Not official, not clothed with office. Incumbent, a person who is in present possession of an office. One who is legally authorised to discharge the duties for an office. In ecclesiastical law, the term signifies a clergyman who is in possession of a benefice. Certify, to testify in writing, to make known or establish as a fact, to vouch for a thing in writing. State ex inf, to give a certificate or to make a declaration about a writing. To warrant. Unarmed adjective is an adjective. It says not having an arm, any an arms or armour, not equipped. Man is born unarmed. It is mean to attack even an enemy unarmed. Not furnished with scales, prickles or other defence, as animals and plants. Webster's 1828. Confused, verb, transitive. Latin, see confound. To mix or blend things so that they cannot be distinguished. Stunning sounds and voices all confused. Every battle of the warrior is with confused noise. And that's Isaiah 9:5, but it's the others from Webster's 1828. Pledge. Contracts. He who becomes security for another, and in the sense, everyone who becomes bail for another is a pledge. And that's Bouvier's 1856. Pledger. Surety, ship, or undertaking or answering for another. Also as pawn. Fronts, billionaires are all pawns. So it's plagiary they're using, Black's Law 6. Sponsor, a surety, one who makes a promise or gives security for another, particularly a godfather, in baptism. In the civil law, one who intervenes for another voluntarily and without being requested. Godfather. Sponsor at the font, Webster's 1828. Signature, we've done. Servitude, the condition of being bound to service. The state of a person who is subjected voluntarily or otherwise to another person as his servant. So indentured servitude, stuff like that. Employee. This is why government treat you like shit. They believe you're the servant. You're not quite the slave. That's WF and Schwab's move. At the moment, you're all servants. A charge or burden. A charge or a burden relating, resting upon one estate for the benefit or advantage of another. A species of incorporeal right derived from civil law. See servitude, so it needs a contract. And closely corresponding to the easement of the common law, except that servitude rather has relation to the burden or the estate burdened, while easement refers to the benefit or advantage or the estate which it accrues. It's Black's. Extinct. Extinguished, no longer in existence or use. Lacking a claimant. A rent is said to be extinguished when it is destroyed or put out. See extinguishment. So that's what the book script's all about. Equitable title. A right in the party to whom it belongs to have the legal title transferred to him, or the beneficial interest of one person whom equity regards as the real owner, although the legal title is vested in another. So that's a trust, isn't it? Your beneficiaries own it, but the trustee has invested in him the legal title. Event. The consequence of anything, the issue, conclusion, end, that which an action, operation, or series of operations terminates. Anything that happens or comes to pass is distinguished from a thing that exists. That which comes, arrives, or happens, especially an incident, which is important or remarkable. The consequence, outcome, sequel, or end affected by prior operation of medium or contributing force or agency referred to as the means or cause. But may be, and generally, as a result. And that's Black's fourth, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that made a bit of sense to you. Till the next time.